Well, welcome everyone to today's presentation uh, on the iStronG grant program. I'm your moderator, Dr. Jonathan McKenzie, Chief Executive Officer for the Family Centered Educational Agency, and partner with the iStronG program with the Council for Opportunity in Education, the University of Boston, Lowell, and a number of other partners. They're going to introduce themselves this afternoon during the presentation. I'm very excited about this project. As a former director and as a director who ran the project, it met several service mandates. When you look at the federal regulations 34 CFR 645.11 and the services that we're required to render, this particular project allowed us to meet several services as far as college readiness, as far as mathematics, science, STEM, as well as other mandates. And so I found it very useful in helping to meet those services. We ran the program for 6 weeks. Students received about an hour and a half of services every day. Came out to about 45 hours of services that were rendered, with about 125 or so various services that were rendered by the time the summer had ended. So I found it really, really helpful. We introduced technology, more technology into the process. We used programs like learning management systems, Canvas. We used other programs similar to Zoom, Big Blue Button, Nearpod, GoFormative, and then we had gameplay games through a software called CrowdPer. So all of this will be talked about in a little bit by some of the other presenters. We also engaged students in a virtual setting and forced the organization to stretch. I heard that this morning some of you were interested in serving as pilot sites, possible pilot sites for the summer. I would highly encourage you to look into that. And I've been told by our colleagues at the council that they are open to that actually occurring. And so with that being said, I'd like to introduce our presenters. We have Carolyn McCarthy, Linda McDowell, and Ricardo Torres, who will take it from here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. McKenzie. And my name is Carolyn McCarthy, and I'm from the UMass Lowell Climate Change Initiative. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the iStronG project, talk about some of the main learning goals, some of the main competencies that we hoped students would leave with after the 6-week program, and then give a brief overview of some of the content as well. And so iStronG is a project, a 3-year grant that is funded by the National Science Foundation, led by the Pell Institute, and also is made possible through a number of collaborations, including those from the Water Center for Systems Thinking, the Climate Change Initiative, and then of course the 4 pilot sites who not only implemented the curriculum, but also were a part of the development process. So those were the Family Centered Educational Agency, UMass Boston, Kansas State University, and the University of Georgia. So here are the 3 main learning goals of this course. The first learning goal is a very general learning goal, and it's so that students will have a greater interest in learning about the world around them. The second main learning goal is that students feel that they can make a positive contribution to the world around them. So after these 6 weeks, they leave with that confidence that they can make a change as it relates to climate change as well. And then this third main learning goal is for students to learn more about and to prepare for careers and work related to green jobs and green STEM. And I think it's really exciting because we've run our first set of evaluation looking at some of the data we collected from pre-tests and post-tests. And so far we have some evidence to support that we did achieve some of these learning goals. So one of these main pieces was that our evaluation showed that after experiencing the curriculum, students left with a strong sense that they learned a great deal about climate change solutions, for one, and also they learned about actions that they could take to address climate change. So that's supported in our research. And then another great piece that we discovered was that 82% of the students who went through this iStronG curriculum said that they were more knowledgeable about green STEM afterwards. And then 57% of those same students were more interested in pursuing a major related to green STEM. So I just wanted to share some of those first evaluation points as we talk about our goals. And so here are also our main competencies for the course. And as I read through them, you'll notice that they touch upon some of the main pieces of this course, which are learning about systems. That's the first one. Learning about systems in terms of how they relate to climate change systems. So looking at ecological factors, economic factors, social factors involved in climate change. Another one of the main pieces of this curriculum is mathematically modeling systems, so related to some of that technology that Dr. McKenzie talked about at the beginning. And then the fourth is using all of these learnings to apply to a local project that they could implement in their community. So the first competency was that students would understand systems and be able to apply the habits of a systems thinker, which I'll talk a little bit more about soon. This second competency is to have an empathetic understanding of world climate issues. The third competency is to have literacy in both climate systems and the carbon cycle system. The fourth competency is to have an introductory level competency with Stella, which is our modeling program, our mathematical modeling computer program. The fifth competency is to have knowledge of drawdown solutions at a global and local level. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about those later, and how these different climate change solutions at these various levels relate to green work and lifestyle. And then the last competency for this course is that students demonstrate preparation and communication of a solutions-based project at the very end. And so I'll continue with a brief overview. Again, Dr. McKenzie mentioned we had about 6 weeks for this course, and the entire curriculum is split up generally into 6 units. So in the first unit or the first week, depending on how it went, students received an introduction to systems. They learned about the habits of a systems thinker. They learned about systems modeling, so more qualitative ways to map systems in front of you, and then also received an introduction to that mathematical modeling component. So this is a really packed first unit, and I'm sure some of the educators who speak after me can talk more to what that looked like with the students. And here's just one slide to highlight. One of the main pieces of this first week was just having students go through a number of habits that people who think systemically will use. And here's an example of being able to change your perspective to increase understanding. The second unit was everything having to do with the world climate simulation. So the world climate simulation is one of my favorite parts of this curriculum because it is where students take on the role as delegates from all over the world. They represent individual countries or regions. And they come together at a mock UN conference to have a negotiation, to negotiate a global climate deal that will keep us below, well below 2 degrees Celsius temperature increase. Those are some scientific technical pieces, but it's really a mock conference of, here's a picture I have here, of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. So it's a simulation in that, again, students are in a role play where they're starting to empathize with these different regions and advocate for themselves. They give proposals, they make speeches, and then have to communicate with each other in order to achieve, goals that reach their own individual interests as a region, and also, for the betterment of the world. And it's also a simulation in that they're interacting with a simulation model. So when students make their proposals in this negotiation, all of their decisions are entered into this computer interface here, and they can see real-time impacts of what their decisions would have on the real world. And I think it's also just a fun note to say that some of that same mathematical modeling software that they use later in the course is the actual software that produces this model. So they're learning the very same tools that they're getting to interact with and run different scenarios for decision makers here as well. And then in Unit 3 is where they really take a deeper dive into the modeling component. So the first lesson in this unit is all about modeling the carbon cycle, and they have an opportunity to build a carbon cycle from scratch and also just interact with a carbon cycle and see how different changes percolate throughout the entire system. It's also in this unit where they are introduced to Project Drawdown, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. So here is just a screenshot of one of those models of the carbon cycle that they interact with. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but they play with levers here having to do with burning fossil fuels and deforestation to run different scenarios and see how it impacts temperature. And they can see those projections over here. And then again, another really exciting part of this unit in particular is Project Drawdown. So Project Drawdown is a compilation of all of the climate change solutions that are readily available. You know, they're scientifically proven, and if they were all to be implemented in some combination or some fashion, we would have, we have these solutions to climate change. And so they learn about these at this very high global level and as they relate to different sectors of society, so in electricity or transportation. So that's their introduction, and it prepares them for this fourth unit where they start to think about their local projects. So this first introductory lesson is giving them an introduction to their task for what their goal for their project is, followed by some of these other really important pieces about green jobs and the concept of multi-solving. So here is what the students were tasked with at the end of the course. After they learned a little bit about how a system works, they learned a little bit about how the climate change system works, and then they also studied these solutions at a very global level. They were asked to now reduce emissions of heat trapping gases by 10,000 pounds of CO2 or CO2 equivalents over a 10-week period by designing a project that can be implemented over the next few weeks or months in your school community. So we set this goal for them that was 10,000 pounds sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but that amount that they were tasked with reducing over the a 10-week period was just above an amount that they could do by switching their individual behavior change and really push them past that level so that they would have to start making relationships with stakeholders within their school community or perhaps at another level to really collaborate, to work together and implement that project. And a part of that project is this concept of multi-solving, that we're not just talking about climate change solutions that we'll see these positive impacts of years down the line as we reduce our emissions. It's also about how can these solutions also have a positive impact today. So how could creating a garden not only reduce emissions, but it provides food for your community now, or provides beautiful green areas that you can walk around. So what are those multiple benefits that have short-term and long-term impacts? And then I'll end right here. The fifth and sixth weeks are students preparing, doing research around their projects, and then eventually presenting them to their peers and others in their community. And again, I'll pass it off to the next presenters who will tell you a little bit more about those student projects, and looking forward to answering any questions about the curriculum later on.
Hey, fabulous. Hi, my name is Dr. Linda McDowell, and I have taught the All Hands on Deck curriculum for 2 consecutive years through the University of Georgia's Upward Bound program. And it was very different last year when it was a residential program compared to this year, in which we did it all virtual. And I want to share with you some of the student work that I saw, the perspective as an instructor from what I could see, the changes in the students and the work that they provided and the comments that they made and what they said about it, so that hopefully you can get an idea of how much of an impact this course makes on the students. And I'm also going to share a little bit of the joys and the pains for what we went through. Let's see if I can get this to start. All right, so last summer, when it was a residential program, we had 69 students, 61 who were female and 8 who were male. And having it be all virtual this past summer, there was fewer students who participated. There were 27 females and 8 males. They weren't the same 8 males, but so we were able to have about half of the students served going to an all virtual platform. And again, these students are low income and what we believe are going to be college students. That's our goal. And when they do start college, they're going to be first generation college students and their families for the most part. Last year, it was a 6-week program. And this past summer, wait, I got that backwards. Last year, it was a 5-week program, but this past summer in 2020, it was a 6-week program. And another difference in the 2 implementations was when it was a residential program, we actually had our science course, which I also taught those. And this All Hands on Deck course was an elective course, and we had less time to devote to it. So this past summer, when we went all virtual, this course was the science course. And so that's something that as an educator, my heart is with the backwards design approach to reaching students, because I really believe that when they have an application, then they grasp the concept better. And I think that's what we saw this summer. So we went in and it gave us more time to cover the material, and it gave the students more time to become more engaged in the iStronG program. So some of the highlights is this past summer, they missed that residential aspect because they really liked that, especially the dining hall, and not just because of the food, but they really loved the experience of being there and being on campus. But in the virtual platform, for some of them, they kind of complained because it was so much work. But they were able to really get engaged in the work, and they actually produced a lot more work, and they did more work, and it enabled us to be able to really dive into the program more deeply. And I felt like the students appreciated it more after that initial, oh my gosh, this is work, you know. And then when they really started to appreciate the concept, and I kind of want to say that buying in, you know, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but the more that they came on board, they really, it didn't seem like it was so much work to them. I was able to see, for some reason, in this virtual platform, they shared more freely how they felt. They were very expressive about, you know, what they were interested in, and they asked a lot more questions. So I really appreciated that aspect of it, where even though we weren't face to face, they felt more comfortable with getting engaged. A couple of the obstacles that we saw last summer and this summer. For last summer, when it was a residential program, the classrooms were actually an obstacle to this course, because the idea was that they had always been in the rooms where they were, and that's where they taught, and we just didn't have the technology. We didn't have computers. There were very few. And when we did have them, we didn't have enough for every student. Now, I will say that this was not a fault of the program, and I want to say I'm not throwing them under the bus, but the Pell people were super helpful in this, and they were able to really reach out and to try to help us overcome any of the problems that we had with the software and with the computers, and they just went above and beyond with helping with the implementation of this at UGA. But the site restrictions that we had by choice were a little bit difficult in getting the technology that the students needed to really get engaged with the course. And there was a time limit too, where of each of these classes is, and I really can't say enough how well the curriculum is written for this course. I mean, as an educator, I just really love the curriculum for this course, and I love to see the way that it has become even better from last year to this year. But the classes are designed to be a 60-minute lesson, and the program had it to be a 40 to 45-minute class, which could be a problem. And when it was residential, I saw that there was more of a tendency of the students to not complete the work and not get it done, where when it was virtual, we could go through what we could go through, and then I could put the links and the material on the Google Classroom for the students to finish in their own pace. And I really saw the students going in and finishing it, and it really wasn't an issue at all. Or I don't say at all. I mean, of course, there's always one or two, but it was much more completion and much more engagement. So the time wasn't as big a deal. So last year in 2019, you can see we were really limited, and the students did a lot of things by hand, and it's some good work that they did. Here you can see the taking my cursor over, here's the multi-solving flower, in which is the students with them, and they put their solutions on there. And here's a presentation that was done completely by hand. The students did, some of them would do some PowerPoint presentations, but a good number of them ended up doing a poster or something by hand. And that's, you know, it's good and fun. I felt like they got the concepts still, but they really didn't engage in the technology of the program that just really I saw in 2020 an improvement in their being able to see, like with the world climate simulation and with the En-ROAD simulator that Carolyn just showed you. The students really love those things. So it was a vital part that they were missing last year somewhat. So, and here you can see an example of a stop flow diagram. And one of the presentations, they would talk about some of their local connections and some green jobs here. So I did get some PowerPoint presentations last summer, but I just didn't see the depth that I saw in 2020 when we were all virtual. Here's some examples of some of the presentation slides that I just pulled out to show you, where they were looking a lot more about what do we want our community to take, and what can we do, and exactly what is this multi-strata agroforestry. They just really delved into it much deeper. And here's something I really liked. You can see local connections, resources, and related green jobs. As being a science teacher, they said the science teacher is telling how this will impact the environment. So they really connected well with the curriculum of the program. And here you can see an example of a Stella program that the students did. And it's really a simple diagram that they did, but I just loved how this group went in and took the number of trees that are cut down and estimated like how much carbon dioxide is accumulated in the atmosphere from one tree, and then the number of trees that we plant and how we have to plant more trees than we cut down. And they went through and they looked and showed that over the 10 weeks time here, we could reduce that specific 10,000 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalents in the atmosphere. So they were getting it, and there was some struggle there, but I love to see that rough and tumble struggle in the students when they're in the classroom. We had like I said, we had some technology issues even when it was virtual, because each of the students had some virtual type of device because they had to, right? Because we were a virtual class. Well, the students, if they didn't have a laptop, they were provided one. And yet they said, no, I'm not going to take one. And we told them they had to get one, but they said, no, I'm just going to use my phone. Well, they couldn't use their phones with Stella. And so there was a bit of a delay in trying to get the technology to the students who needed it, because we had it for them. And then after they had it, we had to get the software on their devices. And I really felt like I should be honorary Geek Squad member for the technical support that I had to do as an educator. Now, I want to give a big shout out to some of the other sites, because they didn't have this problem, because they took and they put the programs on the devices before they gave them to the students, which I highly recommend that that's the way you do it. If you do this, it's just really the way to go. But it did work out to where in each group that I had at least one student who had Stella, and one person in the group, and it was their responsibility to do the modeling. So a couple of the things that I saw from the students that were just really impressive. At the beginning of the program, the students would express how afraid that they were. And the students actually said that we didn't do this. This shouldn't be our fault. You know, we're not the ones who messed up our planet, and yet here we are, like there's nothing we can do about it. And they really felt like doomed and angry. You know, not only is there this big problem and we didn't do it, but yet now here we are, and if we don't do something about it, look what's going to happen to our planet, and how can I as one person do anything about it? And even students would say things like, we can't do anything about this. But then at the end of this program, the students would say, you know what, I'm one person and I can do something. But if I can tell other people and each person does something, then we can all make a difference. And I really, really saw that and heard that from the students through the course. A couple of other things that were really a big impact that the students took home from this course were, of course, they had a lot of fun on the World Climate Simulation. They enjoyed playing the parts of being another country. But what really hit home with them, and it resonated within their being. It was amazing to see these students who really saw the social justice aspects of what's happening in climate change, and that countries that are developing countries are disproportionately affected by what's going on in climate change, and yet they have less resources to be able to do anything about it. But the countries who do have the resources and are the ones who are contributing more so are not as willing to do something about it. And that really hit home with these students this past summer. And another thing that really was great was when we were given our presentations, I invited other people from the Pell Institute who came and listened in on the students, which was something that was a benefit of being a virtual platform. And Sherry Marlin from the Waters Center for Systems Thinking was actually present. And when I asked the students, and it wasn't rehearsed, but I asked the students, I said, what did you like best about this program? And I had students who said, I really appreciated learning a systems way to think about things. That just is really something that stuck with me, about how there's a systems way of thinking, and we're all parts of these systems and we're connected with each other, and we change over time. And it was wonderful. I just was like, that's so great. and I had to let Sherry know, I didn't pay that student to say that. She said that on her own. So I really appreciated how they were able at the end to express that we can do something about climate change, and everybody has to do their part. And there's an example of a slide that the student said, maybe it's a little cliche, but they said that we do need to do something, and everybody's complaining about it and they don't want to do anything about it. But we do need to, and we can do something about it. So If you have any questions for me in the question answer, I'd love to address them. And just a shout out that these slides came from Slides Carnival and the photos were from Upsplash. Slides Carnival is a great site to get your templates. I loved it. So that's me.
All right, so it looks like I'm next. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second. Here we go, I think it's this one. So then, all right. So, hi, my name is Ricardo Torres. I am part of the Family Centered Educational Agency, and I taught the iStronG curriculum for our nonprofit organization that runs Upward Bound. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the technology that we used and the software that we were introduced to this summer to teach this class. So that way you guys, if you guys are interested in teaching this class, you guys are a little bit more familiar with the technology that we use to, teach this virtually. And just in case, this, this pandemic keeps going and we have to teach this again virtually instead of presently, because I also taught this curriculum for 2 years in a row. And I've had that experience of teaching them, in front of them in the class, face to face. And then this year with the challenge of teaching it virtually. So this is just a little bit more about what that side looks like. So that way you guys can get a little bit more familiar. So the challenge was serving and engaging students entirely through virtual means. So the tools that I used were Nearpod, which was introduced new to me through this curriculum. Canvas was something that we were already using and instituting in our program as our learning management system. And then Edmentum is another thing that we used to supplement for other services. It wasn't really used in this class, but I just put it in there for as something that we used over the summer. Big Blue Button is on there because that is a virtual conferencing tool that comes with Canvas. It's kind of like Zoom, but I'd say it's a little bit more interactive, and I'll go into explaining that a little bit more later. I missed a couple of them on here that I explain a little bit more later, but GoFormative is another one that we used in this class, and I'll explain what that is more after this. So the executions. Every app, I say app, works together to engage and teach the students. So we used all these different softwares and LMSs together so that way we could manage the classes and get them into class at the time that they were supposed to be in there, get them all their assignments, and just try to make the class as interactive as possible, because the year before, it was very interactive. There was a lot of things that the students were doing, a lot of projects, a lot of hands-on things that they were working with. There was a lot of materials that were sent to us by the Pell Institute. And so that was great. So now we had to figure out a way to get those same activities, but virtually, and still keep those students engaged. So Canvas organizes your students placing them in specific classes that you can create and that you can assign. So we use that in our programs just to put every student in where they belong into electives that they choose. So that was great. All the students that chose to be in iStronG were majority juniors in high school, and that was great. Canvas also helps you send out phone notifications so that students can get your notifications instantly to their phones. And so, like I put it on here, they're glued to their phones already. So there's no excuse that they missed your conferencing call or that they missed your class, because they always have their phones on them, unless there's an off chance that their phones are dead or something like that. They couldn't find a charger or anything like that. But their phones are always on them, and that's why Canvas is so great, because it offers a app in the App Store for Android and Apple, and I believe Windows as well. So they get that notification as soon as you put it out there that there's going to be class at 11 o'clock. So they go and join in. Canvas also has a conferencing tool called Big Blue Button. And I think that's what I talk about next. Oh, no, I talk about Nearpod. I'll talk about Big Blue Button in a second. So Nearpod is a great tool that lets you teach your lessons virtually and in one of the most interactive ways possible. This was introduced to me by Mike Conley, that he's from Kansas, and great resource. We took it and we figured out how we would use it. And so this is important because of how short students' attention spans are and the material that we use in this class. The Nearpod, it allows you to keep your students on their toes because it's so interactive. They have slides that you teach your lesson through, and then you can ask them questions and different types of challenges throughout your lesson so that you know that they're paying attention. So they have, they can answer true, false questions. They can answer web content that you add in there. There's open-ended questions that you can add in there to, you know, start a discussion about something that you're talking about, and just so you know that they paid attention and they didn't miss it, because you know, they could be blanking out, and if you ask a question, you could see that, you know, if they were paying attention, a majority of students would have gotten it wrong, or they would have gotten it correct. So Nearpod was a great way to teach our lessons that they created virtually this summer. So now I'll talk about Big Blue Button. So Big Blue Button is a tool that is provided by Canvas, and it lets you call the class instantly, or you can schedule a conference to start every day at a specific time. Nearpod does not have audio ability yet. I'd say yet. I think they're probably going to institute it soon. But the great thing was that since we were already using Canvas, it was so easy to just invite all my students that were already in my class to my Nearpod lesson through Big Blue Button, through the conferencing tool. And all you have to do is copy the link from Nearpod and copy it and paste it into the chat in Big Blue Button. And then they click on that and they instantly join your Nearpod session. And you can see every student's name pop up in the Nearpod, and who's active and who's not, who clicked away from Nearpod and who hasn't clicked away from Nearpod. So you can see if they're trying to, you know, watch YouTube or be distracted, and be like, hey, I see that you're not on the lesson, come back. So it definitely allows you to pay attention to all those things and make sure that they're on track. So not only does Big Blue Button serve as a conferencing tool, but as an interactive conferencing tool. So the great thing that I used Big Blue Button for was what Carolyn was talking about, the climate simulation. It allowed me to break the students up into break rooms, and they all were their own separate countries. So we just titled each break room their own country, and then the students that were assigned to those countries went into those break rooms, and they all, you know, got to discuss with each other instead of it all being a jumbled up mess in the big meeting. And so Doc got a chance to jump into those individual break rooms and talk to them about how they were doing on their projects, what they were going to negotiate about. So did I. Also, Big Blue Button allows you to poll your students. So you can start polls to get a feel of how your students feel about how confident they are in the subject matter. So that's something that I did every unit. At the end, I'd be like, so how confident are you in this unit now that we're done? Did you learn it? Do you need to go over it? Is there something that I need to explain over again? And those polls are helpful because, you know, sometimes students are shy. They don't want to talk. They don't want to talk about when they don't understand something because they're afraid that they'll get ridiculed about it. So it helps me as an educator to you know, see that and, you know, confront that privately with them and, you know, go over that if it need be. So another thing that Big Blue Button has is that it has a multi-user whiteboard. So I could put something up on the board, and this was super useful in this curriculum because there's a lot of graphs and a lot of maps that we create in the iStronG curriculum. So there's something called a stock flow model. So what I would do is I would put a stock up in the whiteboard, and then I would have the students finish the model in that multi-user whiteboard. So somebody would have to put in the inflow, somebody would have to put in the outflow, somebody would have to put in the converter, and so on and so forth. And I'm using a lot of terminology from the class, but you know, if you do teach it, you'll come to learn all those things. And so that's why I love Big Blue Button. It's super interactive. So all the things that we're using are super interactive, trying to keep them to stay focused with us. So GoFormative is something that, so GoFormative is an amazing tool that allows you to create assignments and keep track of your students' work. The work can also be sent to anyone you want. So it's great for this class because the way we were working, we would do the work and then the work would be sent over to the Pell Institute so that that way they could research what we were doing. And so that's what's great about GoFormative, and you can just link that into your Nearpod session. I'd explain Nearpod as just like a really fancy PowerPoint, a very interactive, very fancy PowerPoint. And so that's why I said that you can just link the GoFormative that you make into your Nearpod. So that way when you're clicking through the slides, the students can click on that link, go into the GoFormative, into the assignment that you created, fill that out. And another great thing about GoFormative is that, again, it lets you see in real time what each student is answering and if they're not answering. So I did have a student that thought that, you know, they could cheat the system and just leave answers blank and then just run through and submit all the questions. What they didn't know is that I could see everything that they were doing on the back end. So, you know, I talked to that student separately and I was like, hey, I can see what you're doing. You're doing 100%. You're completing these a lot faster than everybody else. But I can see that you're not answering. So how about we start answering those? You need to get this participation for this class. So that it allows you to do that as well. And it allows you to see what students are getting wrong. If like 90% of the class is getting one question wrong, they didn't understand that you know, that topic in the lesson. So that lets you know that you need to review that again at the end or spend an extra day talking about that. So that's what I love about GoFormative. You can also see answers in real time. You can hyperlink it. And yeah, so that's GoFormative. And then I have a short video, well, sort of a short video. Hopefully I can show it all. So what we did here at FASIA is that we told all of the groups that broke up into, you know, groups of 2 or 3 that did their drawdown projects. And we told them, hey, you're going to create a PowerPoint and you're going to present it. We're going to live stream your guys' presentations to a lot of people that Doc invited because Doc knows everybody. So the students were able to present in front of the people here that are presenting today and everybody else that joined the live stream. And so it went really good. There's a snippet in here and I'll just let the video play and one of the students' presentations will play there. I don't know what my time limit is on here, but I'll see how much I can go. And then I have a little bit of my, what my views were on the class at the end of this video. So we'll go ahead and play that.
For the past 6 weeks, these now climate change experts have been learning what we are facing as a whole when it comes to climate change. They transformed from students of Chicago, Illinois to United Nations ambassadors. Together, they worked diligently to devise a plan to reduce global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. They learned how to map and actually visualize the processes that they were talking about through the state-of-the-art Stella model software, as well as creating casual loop diagrams and flower diagrams, which helped them show visually what was happening and why. Thank you to all of you for being so hardworking and attentive.
My project was nuclear power.
So my project is on diminishing the effects of food waste.
This is my moving electricity program.
Our project was titled Saving Our Lake Friends.
All right, I'm Desire.
And I'm Christiana, and we decided to do staple tree restoration.
So next we have Bonita and Stephanie, and they're doing bamboo and forest protection.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So our goal was to demonstrate the effects that planting bamboo in abandoned inhabitable areas and protecting the bamboo forest would have on CO2 emissions after 10 weeks.
Our plan to reduce 10,000 pounds in 10 weeks or less. After doing our calculations, we found that with about 217.4 acres of land, we would have gotten rid of 100,000.4 pounds in 10 weeks.
So why bamboo? Bamboos not only help slow down the rate of CO2, but also has been used to fight deforestation, stabilize steep slopes and riverbanks, and cut erosion. Bamboo quickly takes CO2 out of the air, making it ideal in inhospitable degraded lands. Bamboo is also the fastest growing plant in the world, able to grow as tall as a 10-story building in just 8 weeks. Bamboo also has many different uses.
What we found online was that 100 acres of bamboo gets rid of 12 tons of CO2 per year. So using that math, we found that with 217.4 acres of bamboo, we would get rid of that much CO2.
So our key variables and stocks: deforestation, dying bamboo already existing, afforestation, emissions per week, workers, emissions reduced, and amount of bamboo.
So this is what our original Stella model looked like, but right now we will only be focusing on a small portion of it. Using this, we found how much bamboo it would. So already existing afforestation would add to the bamboo, meanwhile dying and deforestation would lower the amount of bamboo. Multiplying that by how much CO2 is taken by bamboo, we found how much emissions would be reduced.
So these are our loops. The first one is the amount of CO2 increases, the amount of bamboo also increases, which if we have more bamboo, then at that point, the amount of CO2 will decrease since we have already bamboo planted, and it will take out the CO2. Now we have our reinforcing loop, which will be the amount of bamboo increase, the uses for bamboo increase, and the substitute uses increases also. And our balancing loop, which will be deforestation will increase with more protection loss, then the deforestation will decrease.
The less trees that there are, or bamboo, the more trees are needed. That's why afforestation would go up, making it a reinforcing loop. And the more inhabitable areas that there are, the more gets torn down, the more areas that are available for afforestation, lowering the amount of abandoned areas. More deforestation there is, the more afforestation there is. More trees get cut down, more trees should be planted.
So long term, 33.52 million hectares of bamboo planted today on 69.8 through 174.3 million hectares of degraded forest land. Carbon sequestration calculations include both living biomass and long-lived bamboo products. Annual rate of 2.03 tons of CO2 per hectare, 8.3 through 21.3 gigatons of CO2 sequestered by 2050. Initial investment of $52 through $162 billion, and lifetime operational cost of $566 through $1,444 billion. It could yield a lifetime net profit of $1,707 through $4,348 billion. Bamboo can also be a substitute for aluminum, concrete, plastic, steel, etc., leading to even lower emissions. Those benefits are not included. So these are some examples that bamboo can be used.
Cost and profit. From 2020 to 2050, if we were to start today, we would get rid of 8.27 to 21.31 gigatons of CO2. And from protecting the forest, it would be 5.52 to 8.75 gigatons of CO2. It would take $54.25 to $161.94 billion to implement the solution. It would cost negative $1.44 to negative $0.57 trillion in lifetime operational costs and would result in $1.71 to $4.35 trillion lifetime net profit.
So this is our flower diagram. So resilience, used to fight deforestation, stabilize steep slopes and riverbanks, and cut erosion. Energy, industry, and mobility, burning bamboo for fuel. And connection, connects people to the earth through the use of bamboo reusables.
Bamboo shoots can also be eaten, and bamboo is also used to remove contaminants from land. It would create more jobs, as bamboo would need to be protected and sold, and it is very healthy. It is a good substitute for steel, leading to less need of factories and cleaner air.
So forest protection laws, that some examples: cutting down bamboo without permission will get fined. No trespassing, no smoking in this area. Respect the area. Hunters are not allowed, and no littering.
And those are the websites that we used.
All right, so that was one of our projects that we had during our our presentation days. So throughout the 6 weeks, they learned all that information, and then they went on to do their own research on a topic that they were interested in. And so those two girls, they were interested. One was interested in bamboo, the other one was interested in forest protection. So they combined together to create that project that you saw there. And so there were so many other projects. I wish I could highlight them all. But definitely my takeaways from teaching this class was being able to be a part of the curriculum creation process was amazing. And it got me even more excited to teach this class. And I'm forever grateful for them to invite me to be a part of that process. It taught me so much about what it takes to create a class like this. The first year teaching this class, I was just giving the curriculum, but the second year I was able to come and help and, see what was, my view on the curriculum and what we can change to better the curriculum. So I'm very grateful that they, saw my side and they implemented a lot of what I said. It hits on all the things we need as programs for constituting a STEM service, which was great. And that was my job over the last 2 summers. Everything was interactive, whether I was teaching in front of them or virtually. And that's something that we talked about when we all met. They flew me out to Boston and we all met together to revise this curriculum. And, one of the questions was, if we do have to do this virtually, how would we do it? Because around that time was when, COVID was just starting to, appear, which was in January, February. So we talked about that, the possibility of that. And the students were always engaged and interested in the curriculum. I say that because, every time I had, students talking about how much they loved the simulation, how much they loved. I actually had a student say that they loved Stella. And that was really interesting for me because I've never had a student say that they loved Stella. It was always like, yeah, it's kind of cool once you get to learn it. But this girl, she loved it, all the numbers, the analytics, the equations. She also took calculus over the summer, and she was a junior. She is now a senior. So she really loves math. So I think that's why she was really interested in the Stella modeling software. So the class was challenging for students, which they liked. It wasn't something super easy that, they got bored with. It was actually challenging. It made them think about the class. And then the curriculum was also a great mix of categorical lessons and numerical lessons. Like I said, there was stuff for those people that loved math, which was more of the Stella modeling, researching the numbers, putting in the equations and, getting those graphs. And then there was a good mix of the categorical lessons, which was like the flower diagram, the stock flow models, stuff like that, where they could visually see what they were learning and didn't have to do too much with numbers and stuff like that. So they were able to learn this curriculum and all this through these two different paths. If they didn't understand one, they could understand the other, but together they worked perfectly. So yeah, I had a great time, and I hope that I'm able to teach this again. And I'm very thankful for them to give me the opportunity to be able to teach this. So yeah, that was my part. If there's any questions, I'd love to answer them. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ricardo, and Linda as well. And I know that Chelsea is also still with us. There was one question for her. I'm just going to remind all of the attendees to please don't forget to complete the evaluations for this section. And if there are any questions, we'd like to ask you to put them in the chat box. I think we have 1 or 2 minutes. I don't know how much time we have, but perhaps someone can let me know. Are there questions right now that we can answer for you as practitioners, as Upward Bound directors, counselors, or pre-college students? How can we get student programs involved? That's from Michelle Danvers Foss. You can contact the Pell Institute and ask for Maggie at the Pell Institute, and let her know that you're interested. And I think that they can then let you know more. And Chelsea Murray has put her email address in the chat box. You can contact Chelsea, and she can give you more information. I'm going to ask Carolyn if you have anything else you'd like to comment on or say before we address any other questions.
No, just that Pell does have plans to make the curriculum available. We have both the 2019 curriculum as well as the 2020 curriculum. And so we're in a process now where we're looking for how can we make that easy to give you access. And also there are plans to schedule webinars. So for those folks who are new, who would like to learn a little bit more about it, we're planning webinars as well. And I think that's it in terms of the plans moving forward. And then just that this is going to be the 3rd year of the curriculum. And so we did a lot of work between the 1st and 2nd years to improve the curriculum and improve it for a virtual experience. And this year is going to be highly focused on developing those tools so that educators will feel really confident going into that classroom at the beginning, considering so many of these pieces of the curriculum are new: systems thinking, systems modeling. So that's a real focus for this time around.
Great, thank you. I think one question from Angel Perez says, will guidance on how to incorporate this with our programs be placed in the STEM community of practice page?
So I'll answer that. I think that's a great idea to include it. So I'll definitely make sure that we table that and it gets back to leadership, because it would be the best way to incorporate both engagement on communities of practice and then disseminating the information on how to do that.
Great. There's another question. The curriculum seems to be very robust. Is it doable if you teach all core curriculum to each student? From a program director's perspective, I believe it is doable. It's also an elective course that many programs will put on their books, so students get a chance to choose whether or not they want to participate, in the course. But the teachers would like to comment, either Ricardo or Linda, if you have any comments on that. But I think it's doable.
Yeah, I'll just say that, yeah, it's very robust. And in the first year, we were like, hey, I can't cover all this. What should I do? And like each of the people from Pell and the people who were originally there writing it were so extremely supportive, and they would meet with you and say, here, this is what you can do. So it has enough of that in it to where you can say, this is what I can do, and maybe this is what I can't do. And there are a lot more of the hands-on activities there that your students who really need that can do too. So I think it's very amenable and flexible. So as you can see, like the first year we did a lot of stuff by hand, and then the second year they were able to do much more by computers and do it on the Google Classroom. So, and I think too that even if we do go face to face completely, I mean, there'll still be Google Classroom use, or maybe Canvas if that's what you use, because it just gives you so much flexibility that as an instructor you can mold it as you need.
Yeah. Speaking of Canvas, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I mean, I really like using Canvas because it allows us to model what students will actually see once they get to the post-secondary level, which is one of the mandates of our summer component, which is to, you know, prepare them, model what's happening at the post-secondary level. So that's another, some sort of like caveat or a carrot to implementing this type of curriculum is that you're accomplishing a lot. You're clicking off a lot of things that you need to do as a program. And one question here is, what is the average age of your students? In the first year we did it, we ran it with all rising freshmen. And Ricardo could probably speak to that a little bit. The second year we did it, we ran it with our upper level students who were rising seniors, I believe. Ricardo, you got any comments on that?
Yeah, definitely. So, like Doc said, the first year that I taught this class, it was to all rising freshmen, and it was incredible to see how quickly some of them understood the topics that we were learning about. And that was great because those students that learned the curriculum very quickly, that understood Stella right away, those students kind of became, you know, my partners. They were around me all the time, and then we would split up and we would help the students that you know, were having a little bit of a harder time understanding it. So we would split up and help different tables, and you know, it was great. You know, but there were students that understood this right away. Now with more upper level students like we had this year, and they were majority juniors, you know, there was no need for, you know, helpers. Everybody pretty much understood it really well. And the students were really excited both years that this class was being taught in colleges as a college class, I believe at UMass Lowell. So they were like, you know, it's cool. We're being, you know, we're taking a college class basically, like, you know, all this stuff they're learning in college, and we're barely, you know, about to be freshmen. So they were really interested by that. They saw Mrs. Rooney Varga teaching pictures of her teaching her college students and doing the same exact, you know, simulation. So they were like, you know, we're doing the exact same stuff as them. So they were really excited about, you know, progressing that far in such a short time. And to answer the last question, yeah, I definitely think it's possible. You know, it is very robust, but that's what makes it great, I'd say. You know, all the stuff that they're learning is very meaningful. And yeah, I see that there's one question on here, the source of Stella. We got Stella through, I believe, the Pell Institute, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, if you're interested in that, I'd talk to them, I believe. So yeah.
The other piece that I'd like for people to understand is that, you know, we did not pick our best students to go into this curriculum or this particular course. 45% of the students who enter into their freshman year in high school in our district are reading at the 5th grade level. But many of those students were able to handle the work and handle the curriculum. I think a lot of that is attributed to Ricardo and his style. But students are amazing. I mean, they rise to our level of expectation. And I think if you have the right expectation, you know, you can accomplish some great things with your students. I think there's one other question. Does the current, does the CUR, I don't know what that is, do you do a good job in teaching different science disciplines, biology, physics, etc.? Shout out to Ricardo.
No, yeah. So I think what she meant was, does the curriculum do a good job in teaching different science disciplines, so biology, physics, et cetera, et cetera? And yes, it does. We go over a lot of different, you know, things through that. So one of the things that we went through through this class was something called reinforcing and balancing loops. And so a lot of those examples were from nature. You know, so they learned that, you know, the bee needs pollen from the flower, and the flower needs the pollen from the bee that's already on it to create more flowers to get pollinated. So it's a reinforcing loop that way. And that I taught a little bit of a biology lesson, how, you know, that's I believe it's a dependent relationship or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I probably am, but you know, that loop is something from biology. And then the last year that we were interactive face to face, they did a water project to where they were pumping water in from different cylinders. Yes, it's a mutualism. There you go. Thank you. I appreciate it. And so they were pumping water from different cylinders. And so that was kind of like in a physics standpoint, they could see how much water going in from one and being taken out from the other was happening. So it does have those aspects. You just have to find them. You have to look for them, because if you don't look for them, you won't really realize that they're there, but they're definitely there.
Linda?
Yeah, and I just want to add that if also too, like not only just science and math, but don't forget social studies, don't forget geography, don't forget history, don't forget social justice. I mean, there's so much more to this curriculum that's, you know, very holistic for the students to get them engaged.
I'm so glad you said that, Linda, because you know, as a director, what I was doing, I was recording all of those relevant services, those different things that you mentioned. It's not just math. It's not just, can't just say STEM. You know, what was really involved. And so I saw it as a way to really accomplish the legislative intent and purpose of our program and what we stand for. So those directors that are thinking about doing this, definitely engage others at the Pell Institute, have a conversation with Chelsea Murray, give her your information, Carolyn McCarthy and others, because I know that you will not be disappointed. One last question here, I think we gotta go. I'm a theater teacher. I believe anything you say. Awesome, thank you. Okay, that's Christine. Christine, I want to thank you for exposing my age by me not being able to understand your short, your terminology that you were using in the text there. Any other questions or comments? Or Carolyn, you have anything else you want to say before we go?
No, just Christy, you would love the world climate simulation. It's, you know, a mix of the art and science. You bring the theater into the classroom, and then all of your proposals that you make as somebody else are entered into a model. So yeah, STEAM. Yeah.
All right, Michelle Danvers-Foss, thank you so much. And others who have chimed in and joined in for this session. This concludes our session. And we want to just thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate all of you and hearing about this wonderful experience. Okay, enjoy the rest of the conference.